Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was born with a quirk that gave him complete total control over all aspects of his own biology. What if Deku was born with a quirk that gave him complete total control over all aspects of his own biology? Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world is not built on equality. Some are born with the power to breathe fire, others can pull objects toward them with a thought, and some can simply float. Society calls these quirks. They are the next step in human evolution, a biological singularity that reshuffled the hierarchy of the species. But for 4-year-old Izuku Midoriya, the world was not defined by fire or telekinesis. It was defined by a sound. Thump thump. Thump thump. He could hear it constantly. A wet, rhythmic drumming in his ears. It was the sound of his own heart valves opening and closing, the squish of the myocardium contracting, the turbulent flow of blood rushing through the aorta. If he focused, he could feel the friction of the fluid against the arterial walls. It was annoying. Izuku, sweetie? The doctor is ready for us. Inko Midoriya's voice cut through the noise. Izuku looked up from the plastic All Might figure in his hands. He didn't smile, not exactly. He simply adjusted the muscles in his face to mimic the expression of compliance he had seen other children use. Okay, Mom, he said. He hopped off the chair. As his feet hit the linoleum floor of the clinic, he felt the impact travel up his tibia, rattle his patella, and disperse through his femur. It was too much shock. Inefficient, a voice in his head whispered. Soften the cartilage. Increase synovial fluid production. By the time he took his second step, his knees felt smoother, like well-oiled pistons. Dr. Tsubasa was a man of science, a quirk specialist who had seen everything from children with extra eyes to babies composed entirely of slime. But as he stared at the X-ray illuminated on the light box, he felt a bead of cold sweat trickle down his temple. Mrs. Midoriya, the doctor began, tapping the film with a pen. Usually, when we diagnose a quirkless child, we look for the presence of an extra joint in the pinky toe. It's an evolutionary holdover. Those with quirks tend to have only one joint there, indicating a more streamlined, evolved form. Inko clutched her purse, her knuckles white. And Izuku? Well, that's the thing, Dr. Tsubasa muttered, squinting at the image. When I look at this X-ray, the bones in his foot are wrong. Wrong? Inko gasped. Not deformed, Tsubasa corrected quickly. Optimized. You see, the extra joint isn't there. But it doesn't look like he was born without it. It looks like the bones have fused together. Recently, the calcification density is higher in the metatarsals than anywhere else in his body. The doctor turned his chair to face the small, green-haired boy sitting on the exam table. Izuku was blinking slowly. His breathing was impossibly rhythmic. 4 seconds in. 4 seconds hold. 4 seconds out. Izuku, the doctor said gently. Have your feet been hurting lately? Izuku looked at his red sneakers. He thought about the time last week when he tried to run fast like All Might, but his feet felt floppy and weak. He had wanted them to be harder. Sturdier, like the metal legs of a robot. They were loose, Izuku said, his voice high and clear. So I fixed them. The room went silent. The hum of the air conditioner seemed to roar. You fixed them? Inko whispered. I told the bone to stick together, Izuku explained, as if describing how to tie a shoelace. It took a lot of milk. I had to drink the whole carton in the fridge. Sorry, Mom. Dr. Tsubasa's eyes widened behind his goggles. He reached out and placed a stethoscope against Izuku's chest. He listened for a moment, then frowned. Izuku, can you make your heart beat faster? Izuku tilted his head. Thump thump. It was boring. He wanted it to go zoom. He focused on the knot of nerves in the right atrium of his heart, the sinoatrial node. He didn't know the name of it yet, but he knew it was the button that controlled the speed. He mentally pushed the button. Thump 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 thump. The monitor beside the bed began to wail as his heart rate skyrocketed to 180 beats per minute. Inko screamed. Stop! Stop it! Dr. Tsubasa yelled, pulling the stethoscope away. Izuku blinked. He released the pressure on the node. The heart rate instantly dropped back to a resting 60. It makes me hungry, Izuku stated, rubbing his stomach. Dr. Tsubasa sat back, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. He looked at Inko, his expression a mix of professional awe and primal fear. Mrs. Midoriya, your son isn't quirkless. Far from it. The doctor picked up his clipboard, his hand trembling slightly. It appears he has a mutation class quirk. A form of total biological self-manipulation. He can control his autonomic functions, heart rate, bone growth, metabolism. He can consciously alter his own physiology. What do we call it? Inko asked, trembling. Izuku looked at his hand. He focused on the fingernails. He wanted them longer. He felt the keratin synthesizing, the cells dividing rapidly at the nail matrix. In 5 seconds, his fingernails grew an inch. He focused again, and they stopped. Somatic sovereignty, the doctor whispered, writing it down. Complete rule over the body. Age 5, the playground. The discovery of the quirk changed everything, but not in the way Izuku expected. In the cartoons, getting a quirk meant you got a costume and friends. For Izuku, it meant hunger. A gnawing, bottomless void in his stomach. To fuel the changes, he needed energy. If he wanted to heal a scrape, he needed calories. If he wanted to run faster, he needed carbohydrates. His mother had to double, then triple their grocery budget. Izuku spent most of his time eating rice, fish, meat, vegetables. Anything he could put in his mouth, his body would break down with terrifying efficiency. But the real shift happened at the park. Katsuki Bakugo was the king of the neighborhood. He had explosions popping from his palms, a smell of burnt sugar constantly trailing him. Izuku had always followed him, eyes shining with admiration. Check this out, Deku! Katsuki shouted, blasting himself off the top of the jungle gym. He landed in the sand with a thud, grinning wildly. I'm gonna be the #1 hero. Better than All Might. You're amazing, Kaken! Izuku cheered. He tried to climb up after him. Out of the way, Katsuki, high on adrenaline and the praise of his lackeys, swung his arm. It wasn't malicious, just rough housing, but a small explosion popped right against Izuku's shoulder. Boom! The force knocked Izuku backward. He fell from the top of the jungle gym, tumbling 6 feet down. He hit the ground hard, his left arm snapping with a sickening crack as he landed on it awkwardly. The playground went silent. The other kids gasped. Katsuki froze, his eyes widening. He hadn't meant to hurt him that bad. He waited for the scream. He waited for the tears. But Izuku lay in the sand, staring at the sky. Input: high-intensity signal from left forearm. Radius fractured. Ulna fractured. Soft tissue damage. Cortisol levels rising. Pain. It hurt. It hurt so much. It was like white noise blinding his vision. Solution: inefficient. The pain is a warning signal. The signal has been received. Continued transmission is unnecessary. Izuku took a breath. He located the neural pathways traveling from his left arm up his spine. He visualized a gate, and he slammed it shut. The screaming in his mind silenced instantly. Izuku sat up. His left arm was bent at a horrifying angle, the bone pressing against the skin. He looked at it with mild curiosity. Deku? Katsuki whispered, his voice shaking. Why aren't you crying? Izuku looked up. His pupils were blown wide, black holes swallowing the green. He wasn't crying because there was no point. Crying dehydrated the body. Crying wasted salt. It's broken, Izuku said calmly. He reached over with his right hand, grabbed his twisted left forearm, and pulled. Crunch! The kids screamed. One of Bakugo's friends threw up. Izuku set the bone back in place. I need calcium, he muttered. And protein. Mom made katsudon tonight. If I accelerate osteoblast production, I can fuse the break in 4 hours, but I'll need to sleep. He stood up, dusting the sand off his shorts. His arm hung limp at his side, but he didn't cradle it. He simply tightened the muscles around the break to act as a natural splint. Are we still playing Kaken? Izuku asked, tilting his head. Katsuki took a step back. For the first time in his life, looking at the small, plain boy with the messy green hair, Katsuki Bakugo felt a shiver of true terror crawl down his spine. "Stay away from me," Katsuki hissed, small sparks popping erratically on his palms. You freak." That was the day the name Deku changed meaning. It didn't mean useless anymore. In the whispers of the neighborhood kids, it meant something else. It meant something that looked human, but wasn't quite right. Age 10, the library. The Museum Public Library was a sanctuary of silence, dust, and knowledge. For Izuku, it was an armory. While other boys his age were reading comic books or playing video games, Izuku sat at a corner table surrounded by stacks of books that were far too heavy for a 10-year-old to carry. Gray's Anatomy, 40th edition. Guyton and Hall textbook of medical physiology, molecular biology of the cell, advanced kinesiology and biomechanics. The librarian, Mrs. Sato, watched him from her desk. She had called his mother once, concerned that the boy was looking at pictures of dissected cadavers. Inko had apologized profusely but explained that it was for his quirk. Izuku didn't notice the stares. He was deep in the flow state. He had discovered early on that his quirk wasn't magic. He couldn't just think "make me stronger" and have it happen. He needed to know how. If he wanted to harden his skin, he needed to understand the molecular structure of keratin and how to arrange the crosslinks to form a lattice similar to a rhinoceros horn or a turtle shell. If he wanted to see in the dark, he needed to know how to increase the quantity of rhodopsin in the rod cells of his retina. Knowledge was ammunition. He turned a page, his eyes scanning the diagram of the human adrenal gland. Adrenaline, he thought. Epinephrine. The fight-or-flight hormone. It dilates the pupils, expands the air passages, shunts blood to the muscles, and increases blood sugar. He closed his eyes. He visualized his own adrenal glands, sitting like little hats on top of his kidneys. He squeezed them, just a fraction. A jolt of electricity shot through him. His heart rate jumped. The text on the page seemed to sharpen, the blurry ink becoming razor-sharp. He could hear the librarian's watch ticking from 40 feet away. He could smell the mildew in the carpet. Too much, he corrected. Downregulate. He exhaled, flushing the excess hormone from his blood by upregulating the enzymes in his liver to metabolize it. The rush faded. He took a bite of a calorie-dense energy bar he kept in his pocket. He ate one every 45 minutes. It was a chore, but necessary. "Hey, look, it's the zombie." Izuku didn't look up. He recognized the voice. Tsubasa's grandson, the one with the dragon wings. And beside him, the distinct crackle of explosions. Katsuki slammed his hand down on the table, scorching the wood surface. "Nerd. What are you doing?" "Trying to learn how to be a hero from a book." Izuku slowly marked his page and looked up. "Hello, Kaken. I'm studying the endocrine system." "You're creepy," one of the lackeys sneered. "My mom says you don't feel pain. That you're like a robot." "I feel pain," Izuku corrected matter-of-factly. "I just choose not to process the emotional response associated with nociception. It's inefficient during critical decision-making." "Speak Japanese, damn it!" Katsuki shouted. "You think you're better than me? Just because you can do whatever that gross body stuff is?" "I don't think I'm better," Izuku said. He looked at Katsuki's arms. He could see the micro-tears in the muscle fibers from the recoil of his explosions. He could smell the nitroglycerin sweating from his pores. "Your shoulders are tight, Kaken. You're favoring your right side. If you keep firing explosions like that without reinforcing your rotator cuff, you'll dislocate your shoulder by the time you're 15. Katsuki froze. His face went red. "Shut up. Don't analyze me. I'm just observing. The human body is a machine. Yours is powerful, but it requires maintenance." Izuku reached for his book. "If you eat more gelatin and vitamin C, it would help your tendons recover." "Die." Katsuki swung a fist. It was a reflex. Izuku saw the twitch of the pectoral muscle before the arm even moved. Threat detected. Trajectory, right hook to the temporal lobe. Speed moderate. Response, hardening required. Subdermal calcium deposit. Izuku didn't move. He didn't dodge. He simply concentrated on the skin of his left cheek. Instantly, the cells beneath the epidermis compacted, drawing calcium from his bloodstream to form a localized, bone-hard plate beneath the skin. Wham! Katsuki's fist connected with Izuku's face, but instead of the sound of flesh hitting flesh, there was a dull thud, like punching a bag of wet concrete. Katsuki yelped, pulling his hand back and shaking it. Ow! What the hell is your face made of? Izuku rubbed his cheek. The skin was red, but unbruised. He dissolved the calcium plate back into his bloodstream. You have excellent kinetic chaining, Izuku noted, but you telegraph your punches when you're angry. Your breathing becomes erratic. Katsuki stared at him. The other boys backed away. It wasn't fun bullying Deku. It was like bullying a wall. A wall that gave you medical advice. You're a freak, Deku, Katsuki spat, though he cradled his sore knuckles. You'll never be a hero. Heroes save people with a smile. You just stare. They walked away. Izuku watched them go. He touched the corners of his mouth. He tried to lift them. It felt mechanical. Smile, he thought. Zygomaticus major muscle. Contract. He smiled at the empty table. It didn't reach his eyes. Inefficient, he whispered, and went back to his book. Age 14. Aldera Junior High. The years passed in a blur of calories and calculus. By the time Izuku reached his third year of middle school, he had grown. He wasn't the scrawny kid anymore. He couldn't afford to be. To house the machinery of his quirk, his body had adapted. He stood at 5 feet 8 inches, his frame deceptively lean but dense. He weighed nearly 200 pounds, most of it compacted muscle fiber and reinforced bone density. He moved with a predatory grace, every step silent, every motion calculated to expend the minimum amount of energy. He wore his uniform slightly loose to hide the fact that his anatomy shifted depending on the temperature. Today, it was hot, so he had expanded the surface area of his capillaries near the skin to radiate heat, giving him a slight reddish flush. So, the teacher droned, waving a stack of papers. It's time to think about your futures. But who am I kidding? You all want to be heroes, right? The class erupted into cheers. Quirks flashed, eyes popping out, fingers stretching, rocks levitating. Yes, you have wonderful quirks, the teacher said. But no power usage in school. Now let's see. Bakugo, you're aiming for UA High, correct? Katsuki leaned back in his chair, feet on the desk. Don't lump me in with these extras, teach. I'm going to the top. I'll be the only one from this trash heap to make it to the big leagues. Oh, right, the teacher mused. And Midoriya is also applying to UA, isn't he? The room went dead silent. It wasn't the mocking silence of the past. It was a heavy, uncomfortable silence. The students turned to look at the green-haired boy in the back row. Izuku was writing in a notebook. He didn't look up. He was currently sketching a diagram of Kamui Wood's ability to photosynthesize and wondering if the hero needed to ingest nitrogen-rich fertilizer to maintain limb growth. Hey, Midoriya, a student whispered. Did you hear the teacher? Izuku stopped writing. He looked up. His eyes were intense, analyzing everything at once. The teacher's elevated pulse. Bakugo's clenched jaw. The fly buzzing near the window, wing beat frequency, 200 Hz. Yes, Izuku said. His voice was calm, almost monotone. I am applying to the hero course. Katsuki slammed his hands on his desk. Boom. DKU. Katsuki marched to the back of the room. The other students parted like the Red Sea. They knew better than to get between the explosion boy and the biofreak. You think you can stand in the same ring as me? Katsuki growled, looming over Izuku's desk. Smoke curled from his palms. You have a creepy support quirk. You're a doctor, not a hero. You gonna diagnose the villains to death? Izuku looked at the smoking hand on his desk. Nitroglycerin sweat implies a high metabolic rate, Kaken. You skipped breakfast today, didn't you? Your blood sugar is low. That explains the irritability. I'll kill you! Katsuki lunged. Izuku didn't move his body, but inside, the engine roared to life. Adrenal dump 40%. Pupil dilation max. Time perception slowed. Muscle density hardening. In Izuku's eyes, Katsuki moved in slow motion. He could see the sweat drop flying from Katsuki's brow. He could see the opening in his guard. He could incapacitate Katsuki in 12 different ways. He could crush his windpipe. He could sever the ulnar nerve. He could stop his heart with a precise strike to the sternum, but heroes don't kill. And Izuku wanted to be a hero, so he did nothing. Katsuki stopped his hand an inch from Izuku's face, breathing heavily. He was waiting for a flinch. He never got one. Izuku just stared, his eyes like glass. "You're pissing me off," Katsuki muttered, lowering his hand. "Don't even bother taking the exam. You'll die." Statistically, Izuku replied, the entrance exam has a 0.2% acceptance rate. The mortality rate, however, is 0. "I will be fine." Katsuki kicked Izuku's desk and stormed back to his seat. The class exhaled. After school, the walk home was routine. Izuku took the route under the underpass. It was shaded, which meant he could lower his body temperature regulation and save calories. He fished a nutrient paste tube from his bag and sucked on it. It tasted like chalk and vitamins. He pulled out his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. Most people thought he analyzed quirks. He didn't. He analyzed biology. Mount Lady, gigantification. Issue, square cube law. As she grows, her mass increases cubically while her cross-sectional strength increases only squarishly. Her bones must become exponentially denser, or she manipulates gravity around her own mass. If it's density, she needs a massive calcium intake. If she fights for too long, she likely suffers from microfractures in her tibia. He was muttering. He knew it creeped people out. A low, rapid-fire stream of medical jargon. Incredible. Izuku stopped. The voice came from the sewer grate. A pile of sludge oozed out, forming into a monstrous, liquid shape with wide, manic eyes. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain hissed. "You'll do nicely." Izuku dropped his notebook. Threat assessment, villain. Fluid body type. No visible solid organs. Physical trauma ineffective. Action evasion. Izuku turned to run, firing his fast twitch muscle fibers. He was fast, Olympic sprinter fast. But the villain was faster, surging forward like a tidal wave. The sludge slammed into him, engulfing his body. It forced its way into his mouth and nose. "Don't struggle," the villain laughed. "It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. Then you'll pass out, and I'll take over your body." Suffocation. The panic response tried to trigger. Izuku's brain screamed for oxygen. The carbon dioxide levels in his blood began to rise, creating the burning sensation in his lungs. Panic suppress. Heart rate, drop to 10 bpm. Metabolism, hibernate. Oxygen consumption minimal. Izuku went limp. He didn't fight. Struggling used oxygen. He needed to conserve every molecule. He closed off his trachea to prevent the sludge from entering his lungs. He couldn't breathe, but he could hold his breath for a long time if he stopped moving. 15 minutes, he calculated. I have 15 minutes of residual oxygen in my bloodstream if I remain completely still. The villain paused. Huh! Did he die already? That was fast. Izuku's eyes were open, staring through the green muck. He watched the villain's fluid shift. He was analyzing. Viscosity high. Composition, likely sewer waste and unknown polymers. Weakness, dilution or evaporation. He couldn't win this physically. He needed a solvent. Or, clang, the manhole cover flew into the air. Have no fear. For I am here. A massive figure stomped onto the pavement. All Might. The symbol of peace. Izuku watched, his heart beating once every 6 seconds, as All Might drew back a fist. Texas. Smash! The wind pressure was immense. It tore through the tunnel. The sludge villain was blasted apart by the sheer force of the air displacement. Izuku was thrown back, hitting the concrete wall. Impact warning? Spinal reinforcement engaged. He bounced off the wall, unharmed but covered in slime. He gasped, forcing his trachea open and his heart rate back to normal. He coughed, spitting out the residue. I am sorry for getting you caught up in my justice ing. All Might boomed, gathering the scattered slime into soda bottles with blinding speed. Izuku sat up, wiping his eyes. It was him. The man he had studied more than anyone else. All Might, Izuku wheezed. You are safe now, young man. I must be off. Evil does not wait. All Might crouched, ready to leap. Wait! Izuku scrambled up. He had questions. Not can I be a hero without a quirk? That question was irrelevant to him. He had a quirk. He had a different question. All Might. Your physiology. All Might paused. I've studied your fights. Izuku blurted out, stepping forward. Your mass. It doesn't match your strength output. You defy the laws of physics. How do you generate that much force without shattering your own skeletal structure? Do you have a secondary quirk for shock absorption? Or is your bone density reinforced by? All Might blinked. This fan was intense. Haha. Proper training and a lot of milk, my boy. All Might jumped. The sonic boom rattled Izuku's teeth, but Izuku wasn't done. He needed to know. The secret to All Might's power was the missing link in his own research. If he could replicate All Might's durability, impulse took over. Izuku grabbed All Might's leg just as he launched. Hey! Let go! I love my fans, but this is too much. If I let go now, I'll die. Izuku shouted, the wind whipping his face. We are at an altitude of 2,000 feet. Terminal velocity would shatter my legs even with reinforcement. Oh. Good point. They landed on a rooftop. Izuku rolled, absorbing the impact. He stood up, shaking. That was reckless, Izuku muttered to himself. Cortisol levels critical. Not a very smart move, All Might scolded. Now I really must go. Wait! Izuku yelled. Please! I need to know. Know what? Izuku looked at the giant hero. He took a breath. My quirk. It lets me control my body. Every cell. Every nerve. But I have limits. If I push too hard, I burn out. If I grow too much muscle, I starve. I can make myself strong, but I can't reach you. Izuku clenched his fists. I look at you, and I see something impossible. I need to know if a body can truly handle that kind of power naturally. Or are you just a monster? All Might stopped. Smoke began to pour from his body. A monster. All Might chuckled, but the voice was weak. Is that what you see? Poof. The steam cleared. Standing there was not the giant, but a skeletal, emaciated man with sunken eyes. Izuku didn't scream. He didn't gasp. His eyes narrowed. Scan mode engaged. Muscle atrophy, severe. Respiratory system, compromised. Left lung missing. Stomach missing. Scar tissue, massive trauma to the left thorax. Gastric resection, Izuku murmured instantly. Pneumonectomy. Multiple surgeries. You're running on fumes. The skeleton man looked shocked. You can tell all that just by looking? Your posture favors the left side to protect the injury, Izuku recited, his brain working faster than his mouth. Your skin pallor indicates anemia. You're dying, All Might. All Might sighed, sliding down the railing to sit. You're sharp, kid. Sharper than any doctor I've met. Yeah. 5 years ago, a villain did this to me. Toxic chainsaw? Izuku asked. No. Someone stronger. All Might lifted his shirt to show the gruesome, spiderweb scar. Izuku walked closer. He knelt down, inspecting the scar with clinical fascination. The tissue damage is extensive. The nervous system around the area is wrecked. You're maintaining your muscular form by... What? Flexing? Flooding your system with adrenaline to puff up like a balloon? Got it in one, All Might said, coughing blood. It's a facade. I'm the symbol of peace. I can't let the world see me like this. It's inefficient, Izuku said bluntly. You're wasting massive amounts of energy maintaining the transformation. You're shortening your lifespan every time you do it. I know, All Might said softly. But the world needs a smile. Izuku stared at him. For the first time, he didn't see a biological machine. He saw a man who was hurting. A man who was enduring pain that Izuku himself had turned off years ago. Does it hurt? Izuku asked. Every day, All Might admitted. Izuku looked at his own hands. I turned off my pain when I was 5. I thought it was a weakness. Pain isn't a weakness, kid, All Might said, looking at the sunset. Pain tells you you're still alive. It tells you what matters. I fight through the pain because I want to protect people. Izuku felt a strange sensation in his chest. Not a heartbeat. A tightness. An emotion he hadn't filtered out. I want to save people too, Izuku whispered. I want to save everyone. But people think I'm creepy. They think my quirk is gross. That I'm cold. All Might looked at the boy. He saw the intensity, the intellect, the terrifying control. But he also saw the doubt. Young man, All Might said. You analyzed me in seconds. You survived a villain attack by playing possum. You have a quirk that gives you total control, yet you realize that power has a cost. All Might stood up. He transformed, just for a second, to show his spirit. Heroes come in all shapes. Some are flashy. Some are strong. But the best ones? They are the ones who are ready to do whatever it takes. Even if it hurts. He pointed a finger at Izuku. If you can learn to feel again, if you can use that big brain of yours to save hearts as well as bodies, then yes. You can be a hero. Izuku's lip trembled. He felt a tear duct activate. Inefficient, his brain warned. Loss of saline. Shut up, Izuku thought back. He let the tear fall. The explosion. Before they could say more, a boom echoed across the city. Smoke rose from the shopping district. The villain! All Might patted his pocket. It was empty. I dropped him. I distracted you, Izuku said, horror dawning on him. It's my fault. They both ran to the railing. In the distance, the sludge villain was back. And he had a hostage. Explosions were popping from the muck. Kaken, Izuku breathed. I'm out of time, All Might cursed, clutching his side. I can't. Izuku didn't think. He didn't calculate. He saw the fear in Bakugo's eyes. The same eyes that had looked at him with terror for years were now looking for help. Izuku's body moved on its own. Adrenaline, 100%. Pain inhibitors, OFF. Limiters, disengaged. He vaulted over the railing. He hit the ground running. He wasn't running efficiently this time. He was sprinting, tearing muscle fibers, pushing his heart to 220 BPM. He reached the crowd. The heroes were standing back, helpless against the sludge. Izuku dove under the police tape. You idiot! Stop! Kamui Woods yelled. Izuku ignored him. He charged at the sludge villain. You again? The villain roared. I'll kill you this time. Izuku didn't slow down. He analyzed the sludge. Eyes. The eyes are solid. Kaken! Izuku screamed. He swung his backpack. It hit the villain in the eye. The fluid recoiled. Izuku plunged his hands into the muck. He grabbed Bakugo's collar. The heat was intense. The explosions were burning his skin. Warning, epidermis compromised. 3rd-degree burns detected. Pain levels critical. Izuku screamed. It hurt. It hurt so much. But he didn't turn it off. Why are you here? Bakugo choked out. My legs moved on their own. Izuku yelled, tears streaming down his face. You looked like you needed saving. The villain recovered. I'll crush you both. A massive tentacle of sludge raised up. Izuku looked at it. He couldn't dodge. He couldn't tank it. Option none. Result death. No, Izuku thought. Reinforce everything. Bone density max. Muscle rigidity max, brace for impact. He shielded Bakugo with his body. He prepared to be broken. Detroit smash. The wind pressure saved them again. All Might, forcing his body past its limit, delivered the final blow. The weather changed. Rain began to fall. The aftermath, the scolding from the pro-heroes was loud. They called Izuku reckless. They called him suicidal. Izuku stood there, wrapped in a blanket, nursing his burned arms. He was healing them slowly, knitting the skin back together, but he left the nerves active. The stinging pain was grounding. Bakugo approached him, looking furious and confused. He didn't say thank you. He just grunted and stomped away. As Izuku walked home, tired and hungry, All Might appeared from an alleyway. I am here, All Might? The hero deflated back to his skeletal form. He coughed blood. Kid, I have a proposal for you. All Might looked at Izuku with a seriousness that pierced through the twilight. I've been looking for a successor. Someone to inherit my power. I thought I needed someone strong. someone with a flashy quirk. All Might shook his head. But today, I saw a boy with a powerful quirk who didn't rely on it to be a hero. He relied on his spirit. You dove in when the pros held back. You felt the pain and kept moving. All Might held out his hand. My quirk is called One for All. It is a stockpiling of power, passed down from generation to generation. I want you to have it. Izuku froze. His mind raced. One for all. Stockpiling power. Energy accumulation. If added to my current biological manipulation. He calculated the variables. His body was a machine designed for efficiency. One for All was an infinite fuel source. If he combined them, if he could control the energy of One for All with the precision of somatic sovereignty, he wouldn't just be a hero. He would be the perfect vessel. Izuku looked at All Might. He looked at the hand that had saved the world 1,000 times. I'll do it, Izuku said, and for the first time in years he smiled. A real smile. I'll be the vessel. The streetlights of Muzdalifa hummed with a low-frequency buzz that most people ignored. To Izuku Midoriya, it was a tactile sensation, a slight vibration against his tympanic membranes that he had to consciously filter out. He stood on the sidewalk, the asphalt still damp from the rain that had followed All Might's Detroit smash. The greatest hero in the world, currently a skeletal, sunken-eyed man coughing into a handkerchief, had just offered him the most powerful quirk in existence. One for All, Izuku repeated, testing the phonetics of the name. He wasn't looking at All Might. He was looking inward, visualizing his own double helix. A transferable stockpiling of power. Biologically speaking, that shouldn't be possible. All Might wiped his mouth, tucking the bloody cloth away. It's not just biology, young Midoriya. It's will. It's history. It's a torch passed from hand to hand. Will is just a chemical reaction, Izuku murmured, his eyes narrowing in thought. Neurotransmitters firing across synapses. Dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. But a transferable quirk. For a quirk factor to move from one host to another, it would have to behave like a retrovirus. It would need to insert its own genetic code into the host's DNA, overriding or merging with the existing sequence. He looked up at All Might, his pupils dilated in the low light, giving him that unnerving, shark-like gaze. Does it carry the genetic markers of the previous users? Izuku asked. If I ingest your DNA, am I just gaining the energy, or am I gaining the biological imprints of 7 other people? What is the rejection rate? Has anyone died from the transfer due to anaphylactic shock or genetic incompatibility? All Might blinked, taken aback. Usually, when he offered this power, he expected tears, gratitude, maybe a faint. He did not expect a peer review. All Might scratched his head, his golden bangs drooping. Well, nobody has died from receiving it, as far as I know. But if your body isn't prepared, the power will blow your limbs off. It's too much voltage for a weak wire. Structural integrity failure, Izuku nodded. That makes sense. Energy requires a medium. If the vessel is too brittle, the kinetic output destroys it. Izuku lifted his own hand. He focused on the bones in his forearm. Ulna. Radius. He imagined them thickening, the osteoblasts laying down microscopic layers of calcium like rings on a tree. I accept, Izuku said, his voice firm. But not blindly. If I am to be the vessel, I must be optimized. I need data, All Might. I can't just eat a hair and hope for the best. I need to understand what you are giving me. All Might grinned, a shadow of his hero's smile. You really are a nerd, aren't you? But that's good. I need someone who thinks. The last holder, well, she thought quite a bit too. We need to go to the police station first, Izuku said, shifting gears instantly. The adrenaline in my system is metabolizing. I will crash in approximately 20 minutes. We need to handle the legalities of the sludge villain incident before I enter a hypoglycemic state. All Might's sweat dropped. Right. The police. The aftermath, police station. The fluorescent lights of the precinct were harsh. Izuku sat on a metal chair, wrapped in a shock blanket he didn't need. He had already regulated his body temperature by constricting the blood vessels in his extremities to keep his core warm. Across the room, Katsuki Bakugo sat in a similar blanket. He was silent. Every now and then, he would glare at Izuku, his red eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and fury. Detective Tsukachi Naomasa sat across from Izuku. He was a kind-looking man with a trench coat and a tired expression. So, Tsukachi said, clicking his pen. Let me get this straight. You jumped the barricade. Yes, Izuku said. And you engaged the villain. Yes. Why? Izuku paused. He could give the emotional answer, the one All Might had praised him for. Because his eyes were asking for help. But in this sterile room, with a police officer taking notes, his mind reverted to logic. The pro-heroes were ineffective, Izuku stated calmly. Death Arms lacks the range. Kamui Woods was vulnerable to fire. Empty Lady could not fit in the alleyway without causing collateral damage to the surrounding architecture. The victim, Bakugo Katsuki, was suffering from asphyxiation. Based on the villain's viscosity and the lack of oxygen, I calculated he had less than 60 seconds before permanent brain damage occurred. Tsukachi stopped writing. He looked at the 14-year-old boy. The kid spoke like a coroner reading an autopsy report. So you acted to prevent brain damage? I acted to preserve life, Izuku corrected. My quirk allows me to modify my own density. I determined that I could withstand a direct impact from the villain for approximately 4 seconds. That was enough time to dislodge the sludge from the victim's airway. You could have died, Midoriya, Tsukachi sighed. Quirk or not. That was reckless. Inactivity would have resulted in a fatality with 100% certainty, Izuku countered. My action introduced a variable that reduced that certainty. It was the only logical move. From the corner, Bakugo made a noise, a low growl in his throat. Logical? Bakugo spat. You think you're some kind of computer, Deku? You were shaking. I saw you. Izuku turned to look at him. Tremors are a side effect of excessive cortisol and adrenaline. They are a physiological response, not a psychological admission of fear. Stop talking like that, Bakugo yelled, standing up. You look down on me. You thought I needed saving by a freak like you. Sit down, Bakugo, a police officer warned. Bakugo slumped back, pulling the blanket tighter. Whatever. Just stay away from me. Izuku turned back to the detective. Am I being charged with vigilantism? Technically, Tsukachi rubbed his temples. Using a quirk without a license in a public space to combat a villain is illegal. However, given that you primarily used your quirk defensively to harden your own skin, and considering All Might resolve the situation, we're going to let you off with a warning. A very stern warning. Understood, Izuku said. I will be more efficient next time. Please don't be, Tsukachi muttered. The diagnosis, Dr. Tsubasa's clinic, 2 days later. Saturday morning, All Might, in his civilian guise as Tashinori Yagi, sat in the waiting room of the clinic. He wore a baggy yellow suit that hung off his skeletal frame like a tarp on a scarecrow. He felt out of place. Usually, he visited the top specialists in the world or Recovery Girl. He didn't visit small neighborhood clinics, but young Midoriya had insisted. I need a baseline, Izuku had said. If I am to rebuild my body to accommodate One for All, I need to know exactly what my current limitations are. And I need to see your medical records. Tashinori had hesitated on the last part, but the boy's intensity was hard to refuse. The door opened. Midoriya? The doctor will see you now. Izuku walked in, holding a thick binder. Tashinori followed. Dr. Tsubasa looked older than Tashinori remembered from the stories. He was a round man with thick goggles and a mustache that twitched when he breathed. He looked at Tashinori with suspicion. Who is this? Your father? Tsubasa asked. My personal trainer, Izuku lied smoothly. He requires data on my physiological tolerances to design a workout regimen. Right. Tsubasa spun in his chair to face the computer screens. Well, Izuku, you're a medical marvel as always. I've run the blood work you requested. Your red blood cell count is absurd. It's double the average human. I increased erythropoietin production last week, Izuku explained. I was experimenting with oxygen efficiency for underwater activity, and your bone density, Tsubasa tapped the screen. It's comparable to concrete. You've fused your radius and ulna again? Temporarily, Izuku said. I separated them this morning for better rotational mobility. Doctor, I need to know about my quirk factor, Specifically, the storage capacity of my cells. Tsubasa frowned. Storage capacity? That's theoretical physics, Izuku, not general medicine. But look here. He pulled up a genetic sequence map. Your quirk, somatic sovereignty, isn't just about controlling your biology. It is your biology. Your cells are in a constant state of flux. Most people have static DNA with a quirk gene attached. Your entire genetic structure is malleable. It's fluid. Toshinori leaned forward. What does that mean for him? It means, Tsubasa said, looking over his goggles, that his body is a hungry void. It wants to adapt. It wants to evolve. Usually, mutation quirks are fixed. A guy with a tail always has a tail. Izuku has the potential for anything, but he's limited by energy and mass. He's like a high-performance sports car running on AAA batteries. Izuku nodded, taking notes. So if I were to introduce a massive external energy source, say, a stockpile of bioenergy, theoretically? Tsubasa scratched his chin. Your body would eat it up. It would solve your biggest problem, the fuel crisis. But it would also be dangerous. If the energy is too volatile, your cells might try to mutate too fast to contain it. You could turn into a pile of tumors. Or you could explode. Or, Izuku said, his eyes gleaming, I could construct a containment vessel. A reinforced biological chassis designed specifically to hold the load. I suppose, Tsubasa sighed. You're asking weird questions again, Izuku. Just eat your vegetables and don't fuse your toes together unless you have to. The revelation. They left the clinic and walked to a nearby park. Toshinori sat on a bench, looking at the medical file Izuku had handed him. It was Izuku's analysis of Toshinori's injury. You were right, Toshinori said quietly. My stomach is gone. Half my respiratory system is shot. I'd been holding this form together with sheer willpower. Izuku stood in front of him. He wasn't looking at the hero with stars in his eyes anymore. He was looking at a patient. All might, Izuku said. Your body is failing because it wasn't designed for this. You were born quirkless, right? Toshinori's head snapped up. How did you? Deduction. You told me the power is passed down. That implies you received it. If you had a quirk before, having two quirks would accelerate the aging process or cause cognitive dissonance. You're efficient, but you're singular. You were an empty vessel, like me. I was, Toshinori admitted. I was just a kid who wanted to make a difference. But you didn't have somatic sovereignty, Izuku pressed. You couldn't reinforce your bones. You couldn't shut off your pain receptors. You just took the hit. Over and over again. Izuku pointed to the scar on Toshinori's side. One for all destroyed your body, didn't it? Not just the villain. The quirk itself. The recoil. It's a heavy burden, Toshinori said. It weighs tons. I can carry it, Izuku said. And for the first time, he sounded arrogant. Not out of pride, but out of certainty. I can build a body that won't break. I can optimize the vessel. He opened his notebook to a new page. He drew a stick figure. Then he began to layer muscles over it. Standard human muscle fiber has a tensile strength of about 0.4 megapascals, Izuku lectured. If I restructure my myofibrils to mimic spider silk proteins, which have a tensile strength of 1000 megapascals, I can handle the output of one for all without the blowback. Toshinori stared at the notebook. It was gibberish to him, but the boy's conviction was absolute. Spider silk muscles? Toshinori laughed nervously. That sounds gross. It's efficient, Izuku said. But to do it I need mass. I need calories. And I need the quirk. The plan, Dagobah Municipal Beach Park. The next morning, the smell of rotting trash and salty air filled the beach. Dagobah Beach was a graveyard of human consumption. Tires, fridges, cars, driftwood. Toshinori stood atop a pile of refrigerators, striking a pose. Welcome, young Midoriya. This is your training ground. Izuku stood at the bottom, wearing a tracksuit. He looked at the trash. This is inefficient waste management, Izuku noted. It is. All Might boomed, then puffed down into Toshinori. But it's also perfect for you. You need to build a body capable of holding one for all. So, I have designed a plan. He produced a sheet of paper titled Aim to Pass, American Dream Plan. Izuku took it. He scanned it in 3 seconds. This is a standard hypertrophy program, Izuku critiqued. Monday, chest and back. Tuesday, legs. Diet, chicken, broccoli, rice. Sleep, 8 hours. It's a classic for a reason. Toshinori defended. It's for a normal human, Izuku said, crumpling the paper. It's too slow. If I follow this, I'll be ready in 3 years. We have 10 months until the UA entrance exam. Hey! I worked hard on that. Izuku pulled out his own binder. It was thick. I've designed my own protocol based on my quirk's requirements, Izuku said. To modify my cellular structure to the degree required to host one for all, I need a caloric intake of 12,000 calories a day. I will need to consume primarily nutrient-dense matter. I will likely need to eat some of this metal. Toshinori choked. Eat the metal? Iron, Izuku said, kicking a rusty truck bumper. My blood needs to carry more oxygen. Increasing my hemoglobin requires iron. Direct ingestion is the fastest route if I increase my stomach acid acidity to pH 0.5. You're going to eat a truck? Parts of it. I'll grind it into powder first. It's better for digestion. Izuku looked at the massive piles of trash. I won't just move the trash, All Might. I will consume the useful elements, and recycle the rest. By the end of these 10 months, I won't just be fit. I will be a biological fortress. Toshinori looked at the boy. He felt a strange mixture of pride and nausea. Okay, Toshinori said weakly. Just, don't die of tetanus. I've already vaccinated myself, Izuku said, walking toward a refrigerator. I synthesized the antibodies yesterday. He grabbed the refrigerator. He didn't lift it. He braced his legs, his calves bulging as he consciously thickened the muscle fibers. Test 1, myostatin inhibition. The body naturally produces myostatin to stop muscles from growing too large. It's a safety mechanism. Izuku focused on the gene expression in his arms. Inhibit. His muscles swelled instantly, tearing through the sleeves of his tracksuit. Veins popped out like garden hoses. Hooray! Izuku lifted the 400-pound fridge over his head with a primal scream. Toshinori's jaw dropped. Holy! Izuku held it for 10 seconds, then dropped it. He fell to his knees, panting. His arms shriveled back down to normal size instantly. Inefficient, Izuku wheezed. Too much energy cost. I need to stabilize the growth. I need food. He looked at Toshinori. Do you have lunch? School days, the uncanny valley. Aldera Junior High was different now. The bullying had stopped. Not because Bakugo had grown a conscience, and not because the teachers intervened. It stopped because Izuku had become unsettling. He sat at his desk eating. Always eating. While the teacher lectured on history, Izuku was quietly chewing on a block of high-density pemmican he had made himself. Every 10 minutes he would take a sip from a gallon jug of a thick gray sludge. Midoriya, the teacher said, annoyed. Put the food away. My metabolic rate is currently operating at 400% to facilitate osteogenesis, Izuku said, swallowing. If I stop eating, I will enter a catabolic state and begin digesting my own organ tissue. Would you prefer I eat my own liver in class, sensei? The class went dead silent. No. Carry on. Bakugo watched him from the front row. He wasn't yelling anymore. He was observing. After class, Bakugo cornered him by the lockers. Deku. Izuku paused, closing his locker. Kaken, you're doing something, Bakugo said. You're getting bigger. And not just working out bigger. I saw you in gym class. You took a dodgeball to the face and your nose didn't even bleed. You turned your face into a rock. Keratin reinforcement, Izuku said. It's simple. It's not simple. Bakugo slammed his hand against the locker. You're plotting something. You think you're gonna get into UA with that freak show quirk? You think you can beat me? Izuku looked at Bakugo. He saw the insecurity radiating off him. Bakugo was a prodigy, but he was stagnant. He was relying on the genetic lottery. Izuku was building himself from scratch. I'm not trying to beat you, Kaken, Izuku said. I'm trying to survive what comes next. What comes next? Evolution, Izuku said enigmatically. You rely on your explosions. They are powerful. But they hurt you. I can hear your joints clicking. I can smell the inflammation in your wrists. You're hitting your ceiling. Izuku leaned in close. I'm removing my ceiling. He walked away, leaving Bakugo trembling with rage. The 10 months. The montage was not of a boy running into the sunset. It was a montage of biological horror and wonder. Month 1. Izuku cleared the small debris. He focused on his digestive system. He thickened his stomach lining to handle the massive caloric load. He spent nights reading medical journals on quirk genetics. Month 3. The heavy lifting began. Izuku started experimenting with adrenaline regulation. He learned to toggle hysterical strength, the power mothers used to lift cars off babies, on and off at will. It broke his bones the first few times. He drank gallons of milk to fix them. Month 6. He ate the hair. It happened early. Izuku argued that waiting until the end was inefficient. I need the quirk to integrate with my biology while I build the muscle, not after, he reasoned. Toshinori gave him the strand of hair. Eat this. Izuku didn't hesitate. He swallowed it. Then, he focused on his stomach acids. Dissolve. Isolate DNA. Integrate. He felt it immediately. A burning sensation. A power that wasn't his. It felt like a star had been ignited in his gut. His body tried to reject it. His temperature spiked to 106 degrees. He vomited blood. Young Midoriya. All Might panicked. I'm fine. Izuku gasped, his skin steaming. Immune response, suppressing. Cellular integration, commencing. He lay on the pile of trash for 3 hours, twitching as his body rewrote itself. When he stood up, the air around him crackled. Month 8. He couldn't use one for all yet. Not really. Every time he tried to channel it, his limbs threatened to explode. But his base form was now a juggernaut. He had eaten enough iron and calcium to make his bones nearly unbreakable. He moved the truck frames by hand. Month 10, the morning of the exam. The beach was clean. Pristine. The sunrise glittered on the water. All Might stood on the seawall. He looked at the boy standing in the sand. Izuku Midoriya was unrecognizable from the child of 10 months ago. He was shirtless, his body a map of dense, corded muscle. He wasn't bulky like a bodybuilder. He was compact, like a jungle cat. His skin had a faint, healthy sheen. His eyes were sharp, intelligent, and dangerous. He stood atop a pile of trash he had compressed into a perfect cube. I did it, Izuku said. You did more than that, All Might beamed, transforming into his buff form. You cleaned the whole beach. And you didn't just move the trash, I processed it, Izuku said. I recycled the metals. I composted the organics. It was efficient. You keep using that word, All Might laughed. But today, you need more than efficiency. You need passion. You are ready for the entrance exam. Izuku looked at his hand. He clenched his fist. He felt the hum of one for all deep in his core, sitting alongside his own quirk. They were shaking hands. His biological control was the cage. One for all was the beast inside. I have a query, All Might, Izuku said. What is it? Usually, one for all is 100% or nothing, right? That's what breaks the user. Correct. It's hard to control the output. I have a hypothesis, Izuku said. If I manually constrict the neural pathways leading to my limbs, if I physically pinch the hose of the power using my own nerves, I should be able to throttle the output. He focused. He visualized the power flowing to his right arm. Then, he visualized his nerves tightening around it, choking the flow. Green lightning crackled around his arm. Not the wild, arcing lightning of a full cowling, but a contained, buzzing hum. One for all, full cowl. 5%, Izuku whispered. He punched the air. Boom. The air pressure blasted the sand back 20 feet. Izuku's arm smoked, but it didn't break. He felt a dull ache, a microfracture in his knuckle, but he instantly flooded the area with calcium to patch it. I can use it, Izuku said, turning to All Might. I don't need to break. All Might felt a tear run down his cheek. You truly are a monster, kid. The best kind. Izuku pulled on his school uniform. It was tight around the shoulders. Let's go, Izuku said. I have an exam to pass. and I need to eat breakfast first. I'm thinking, 12 eggs. The entrance, UA High, the gates of UA loomed large. Students swarmed the entrance, nervous and excited. Izuku walked through the crowd. He didn't look nervous. He was checking his biometrics. Heart rate, 55 BPM. Cortisol, low. Blood sugar, optimal. Hydration, 100%. He saw Bakugo walking ahead. Bakugo sensed him and turned around. Get out of my way, Deku, Bakugo growled, but there was no bite in it. He looked at Izuku, really looked at him, and saw the difference. The way Izuku walked. The density of him. Good luck, Kaken, Izuku said calmly. He took a step and tripped. His foot caught on an uneven paver. Gravity took hold. Error, equilibrium lost. Correction, engage gyroscopic stabilization? No, too slow. Brace for impact. He prepared to catch himself, but he stopped in midair. He was floating. Are you okay? A girl with a round face and brown hair was touching his shoulder. Uraraka Ochako. It's my quirk, she smiled. Sorry for using it without asking. But it's bad luck to fall, right? Izuku floated there. He looked at her hand. Quirk, zero gravity. Mechanism, negation of graviton interaction via tactile contact. Side effect, possible inner ear disturbance for the user. Fascinating, Izuku muttered. You alter the mass-weight ratio of the target. Huh! Uraraka blinked. She released him. He dropped to his feet with a heavy thud, cracking the pavement slightly. Oh! You're heavy! She exclaimed. High bone density, Izuku explained, dusting himself off. Thank you for the assist. That was efficient of you. Efficient? She laughed. You're funny! Good luck! She ran off. Izuku watched her go. Female. Height, 156 centimeters. Quirk, emitter type. Threat level, low. Potential ally, high. Talking to girls? Izuku turned. A tall, stiff boy with glasses was staring at him. Tenya Ida, you are obstructing the flow of traffic, Ida said, chopping his hand. If you are here to treat this as a field trip, you should leave. Izuku looked at Ida's legs. The engines. Engine calves. Exhaust pipes. Fuel source. Likely orange juice or carbonated beverages based on the radiator placement. Need to check cooling systems. Your calves, Izuku pointed. Do you require regular oil changes, or is the lubrication biological synovial fluid? Ida froze. I beg your pardon? Never mind. Just curious. Izuku walked past him. See you inside. Ida stood there, bewildered. What is with this year's applicants? The written exam. The written portion was a formality. Izuku had memorized the textbooks. He didn't just know the answers. He optimized his brain for recall. He increased the blood flow to his hippocampus and frontal cortex. He dilated his capillaries to cool his brain, preventing mental fatigue. He finished the test in half the allotted time. He spent the rest of the time analyzing the proctor, present mic, and wondering how his vocal cords withstood the vibration of his screams. Reinforced cartilage? Or does he project the sound externally? The practical exam, Battle Center B, this was it. The mock city. The crowd of examinees stood before the massive gates. Izuku stood in the back. He was stretching. Not normal stretching. He was dislocating his shoulders and popping them back in to loosen the joint capsules. The other students watched him with horror. Did that guy just pop his arm out? He looks like he's made of rocks. Is he wearing weights? Izuku was wearing ankle weights. 50 kilograms on each leg. He decided to keep them on for the warm-up. Present Mike shouted from the tower. Are you ready? Start. The gates opened. The other students hesitated. Izuku didn't. Objective, immobilize robots. Accumulate points. Strategy, blitzkrieg. He engaged his legs. Myostatin inhibition, 20%. Adrenaline 50%. He launched. He left a crater in the concrete where he stood. He was a blur of green lightning and muscle. He reached the first robot, a one-pointer. It targeted him. Target acqui. Izuku punched it. He didn't use one for all. He just used his reinforced, calcium-hardened fist moving at 200 kilometers per hour. Crunch. The robot's head caved in. It exploded. Izuku didn't stop. He pivoted. A three-pointer appeared. Too slow, Izuku analyzed. He grabbed the robot's arm, ripped it off using his hydraulic-like grip strength, and used the severed limb to bash the robot's chassis in. 6 points, Izuku counted. The other students were just arriving. They saw the destruction. Who is that guy? He's tearing them apart with his bare hands. Izuku moved through the city like a force of nature. He wasn't flashy. He was brutally efficient. Every strike hit a weak point, a joint, a sensor, a fuel line. He didn't waste energy. He reached 40 points. 50 points. He was panting. His body temperature was rising, cooling system engaged. He forced his sweat glands to overdrive. Steam erupted from his skin, hissing loudly. He looked like a Titan engine venting heat. 60 points, he wheezed. Sufficient to pass. But I need to ensure a safety margin. Then, the ground shook. The zero-pointer. It rose above the buildings, a colossus of metal. It blocked out the sun. The other students screamed and ran. Run! It's huge! It's not worth any points. Izuku looked up. Size, massive. Weight, approximate. 1,000 tons. Threat extreme. Logic, retreat. He turned to leave. It was the smart play. The efficient play. Ow! A voice. Under the rubble. Izuku stopped. His sensors, his heightened hearing, picked it up. He looked back. The girl with the gravity quirk. She was pinned under debris, right in the path of the zero-pointer. Logic said someone else will save her. The teachers will intervene. Instinct said move, but something else kicked in. The memory of all might. The memory of the sludge villain. Pain is a signal. Izuku felt a signal in his chest. It wasn't pain. It was duty. Inefficient, Izuku shouted at himself, smiling wildly. He engaged the one for all linkage. Neural limiters, release. OFA output, max. Skeletal reinforcement, max. He didn't jump. He exploded upward. He soared through the air, green electricity arcing off him like a storm. He reached the face of the zero-pointer. He pulled his fist back. He felt the power of 8 generations of heroes flooding his arm. His muscles tore. His bones groaned under the pressure. Smash! He punched the giant robot in the face. The impact was deafening. The metal crumpled like wet paper. The shockwave shattered the windows of the surrounding buildings. The robot's head was blown clean off, the massive body tipping backward. Izuku floated at the apex of his jump. His right arm was purple, broken in 3 places. His legs were shaking. Gravity, he realized. I am falling. He looked down. It was a long drop. Legs broken? No. Just exhausted. Arm broken. Yes. Strategy, roll. Liquefy cartilage to absorb shock. Slap! A hand touched his cheek. He stopped in midair just inches from the ground. Uraraka, floating on a piece of debris, had slapped him. She retched, looking green. Release. She put her fingers together. Izuku dropped the last inch. He lay on the ground, staring at the sky. His arm was throbbing. He didn't turn off the pain. He let it burn. That, Izuku wheezed, grinning, was highly inefficient. Recovery girl walked onto the field. Oh my goodness. What a mess. She looked at Izuku's arm. You really did a number on yourself, Sonny. Izuku sat up. He looked at his broken arm. It's okay, Izuku said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a protein bar with his good hand. He took a bite. I just need calories. As he ate, the class watched in horror as his arm audibly clicked and began to reset itself, the purple bruising fading into yellow, then skin tone. He's healing himself? Is he immortal? Izuku finished the bar. He stood up, swaying slightly. I passed, he whispered, and then, finally, he fainted. Not from pain, but from a lack of sugar. The sunrise over Dagobah Municipal Beach Park was usually obscured by the towering ziggurats of garbage that lined the coast. It was a graveyard of the Showa era, rusted cars, broken appliances, and drift plastic that had formed an artificial reef of refuse. To the average citizen, it was an eyesore. To Tashinori Yagi, it was a training ground. To Izuku Midoriya, it was a periodic table of elements waiting to be harvested. Young Midoriya! All Might's voice boomed, though he was currently in his deflated, skeletal form to conserve energy. Today marks day one of the aim to pass, American Dream Plan. Are you ready to sweat? To cry? To bleed for your future? Izuku stood before a mountain of tires and scrap metal. He was wearing a tracksuit that was already slightly too tight around the shoulders. He held a clipboard in one hand and a digital caliper in the other. Bleeding is inefficient, All Might, Izuku said, not looking up from his calculations. It results in the loss of iron and plasma. Crying causes dehydration and loss of electrolytes. Sweating is necessary for thermoregulation, but excessive diaphoresis indicates a failure in heat management. My goal is to complete this training with zero net loss of vital fluids. All Might's sweat dropped, a small bead rolling down his gaunt cheek. You really suck the romance out of shonen training montages, you know that? Romance doesn't build muscle mass, Izuku replied, clicking his pen. Hypertrophy does. Specifically, sarcoplasmic and myofibrillar hypertrophy triggered by mechanical tension and metabolic stress. He looked up, his green eyes scanning the trash pile with the cold precision of a CT scanner. I have calculated the mass of this sector. Approximately 400 metric tons. To clear this in 10 months, I need to move 1.3 tons per day. However, simply moving it is a waste of kinetic potential. I will use the resistance to tear my muscle fibers, then use my quirk to overcompensate during the repair phase. Izuku dropped the clipboard. He walked up to a rusted washing machine half buried in the sand. Let's begin. Month 1, the caloric deficit. The biggest hurdle wasn't the weight. It was the fuel. Somatic sovereignty was a miracle quirk. It allowed Izuku to tell his body to do things that biology usually reserved for emergencies or long-term evolution. He could tell his bones to thicken. He could tell his muscles to become denser. He could tell his nervous system to conduct signals faster, but he couldn't create matter from nothing. The first law of thermodynamics was absolute. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. If Izuku wanted to build a body capable of holding one for all, a quirk that had destroyed All Might's internal organs, he needed mass. Dense, high-quality biological mass. And that costs money. Mom, Izuku said one evening at the dinner table. I need more. Inko Midoriya looked at the 5 empty bowls of katsudon stacked in front of her son. She looked at the pot, which was empty. She looked at her bank account balance on her phone. Izuku, honey, she said gently, her voice trembling slightly. That was 2 kilograms of rice. And a whole chicken. My basal metabolic rate has increased to 8,000 calories a day, Izuku said, wiping his mouth. I am currently stimulating the osteoblasts in my femur and humerus to lay down a lattice of hydroxyapatite crystals. I'm making my bones like steel rebar. It requires immense amounts of calcium and phosphate. Inko teared up. Oh, my poor baby is eating us out of house and home. I can metabolize cheaper organic matter if necessary, Izuku offered calmly. Cellulose is abundant in grass, though humans lack the enzyme cellulase. I could synthesize a bacterial culture in my appendix to break it down, essentially turning myself into a ruminant like a cow. I would have to chew cud though. Inko turned pale. No chewing cud. I'll pick up extra shifts at the hospital. Just, please eat normal food. The financial strain was real, but so was the progress. Izuku treated his body like a construction site. He didn't just work out. He engineered himself. When he lifted heavy debris, he didn't just pull. He visualized the attachment points of his tendons. Inefficient leverage, he would think. Shift the insertion point of the biceps brachii 2 centimeters down the radius. He would focus, feeling the slide and pop of his own anatomy rearranging itself under the skin. It was gruesome. It sounded like wet leather stretching. But the result was instant mechanical advantage. All Might watched from the sidelines, often covering his mouth to hide his horror. Young Midoriya, All Might said one afternoon, watching Izuku drag a truck chassis through the sand. Does it hurt? Moving your tendons like that? Izuku paused. The truck chassis, weighing nearly a ton, dug deep furrows in the sand. Nociceptors trigger pain signals when tissue is stressed, Izuku recited. I have set a threshold. Unless the damage is critical, like a rupture, I simply don't acknowledge the signal. It's just noise. That's dangerous, All Might warned. Pain tells you when to stop. Pain tells you when you are stopping, Izuku corrected. I don't plan to stop. He hauled the truck another 10 feet, his muscles bulging under his skin like coiled snakes. Month 3 the wall. By the 3rd month, Izuku had hit a plateau. Not a physical one, but a biological one. He was sitting in the sand, surrounded by medical textbooks he had borrowed from the library. He looked frustrated. What's wrong? All Might asked, handing him a bottle of water. The square cube law, Izuku muttered. As I increase my muscle density, my weight increases cubically. I am currently 85 kilograms, but my volume hasn't changed much. I am becoming incredibly dense. If I continue at this rate, my own weight will put undue stress on my connective tissues. My ligaments can't keep up with the muscle output. He held up his hand. He flexed. The skin was tight, hard as a drum. I need a better material, Izuku said. Human collagen is too weak. I need to synthesize something stronger for my tendons. Maybe something akin to spider silk or Kevlar. You can't just grow Kevlar, kid, All Might laughed nervously. No, but I can alter the protein structure of my collagen fibers, Izuku murmured. I need glycine. Proline. Vitamin C. Lots of it. He looked at the ocean. And I need to optimize the vessel for shock. Shock? One for all, Izuku said, looking at the hero. It's kinetic energy, right? When you punch, you generate force. Newton's third law, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. When you hit a villain with 100% of your power, your arm takes the same 100% force in reverse. All Might nodded gravely. That's why I have this. He pointed to his scar. And why my arms are still intact. I learned to brace. Bracing isn't enough, Izuku said. I need shock absorbers. For the next week, Izuku did something that terrified the local joggers. He stood on the sea wall, 20 feet above the sand, and jumped off. Over and over again. Jump. Land. Snap. Inefficient, Izuku would mutter, healing the hairline fracture in his tibia instantly. Jump. Land. Crack. Better. Thickened the meniscus. Jump. Land. Thud. By the end of the week, he could jump from 20 feet and land without bending his knees, simply by softening the cartilage in his joints to the consistency of ballistic gel upon impact, then rehardening it instantly for stability. He was building a suspension system. Month 6, the consumption. The sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the trash heaps. The beach was half cleared. Izuku stood shirtless, sweat glistening on a torso that looked carved from marble. He wasn't bulky in the way All Might was. He was compact. Compressed. If you flicked Izuku's chest, you wouldn't hear a fleshy slap. You would hear a solid thud, like hitting a tree trunk. It is time, All Might said. He stood before Izuku, holding a single, long blonde hair. You have prepared the vessel. Your body is, frankly, it's terrifying. I've never seen a human modify themselves to this extent. All Might looked serious. But now comes the variable we can't calculate, the quirk factor. Izuku stared at the hair. One for all is a living power, All Might explained. It stockpiles power, but it also stockpiles the will of the predecessors. It is genetic data. When you ingest this, your body, your somatic sovereignty, is going to react. It might try to fight it. An immune response, Izuku nodded. My white blood cells might identify the foreign DNA as a pathogen and attack it. If I break down the DNA before it integrates, the quirk transfer fails. Exactly, All Might said. You have to accept it. You have to tell your body not to fight. Izuku took the hair. It was light. Insignificant. Eat this, All Might commanded. Izuku put the hair in his mouth. He didn't swallow immediately. He closed his eyes. He visualized his esophagus. He visualized his stomach. He visualized the hydrochloric acid pooling in his gut. Lower acidity, he commanded. Neutralize pepsin. Do not digest. Absorb. He swallowed. He tracked the hair as it traveled down. He felt it hit his stomach lining. Permeate, he ordered. The cells of his stomach lining opened, embracing the foreign genetic material. Then, the fire started. It wasn't a metaphor. Izuku felt a sudden, searing heat bloom in his solar plexus. It felt like he had swallowed a chaotic ball of lightning. Guh! Izuku dropped to his knees, clutching his stomach. Young Midoriya! All Might stepped forward. Stay back! Izuku gasped. His skin flushed bright red. Steam began to vent from his pores. Inside him, a war was waging. Foreign entity detected, his autonomic nervous system screamed. Threat level unknown. Energy signature massive. Procedure, destroy. His immune system mobilized. Killer T-cells swarmed the site. No, Izuku thought, his mental voice booming through his own biology. Stand down. This is not an invader. This is fuel. He forced his immune system to halt. It was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a thought. The strain was immense. His brain felt like it was melting. The one for all energy lashed out. It was wild, ancient, and powerful. It sought purchase. It wanted to merge. Integration commencing. Izuku analyzed through the pain. The quirk factor is binding to my own DNA. It's rewriting the non-coding regions. His somatic quirk met the stockpile quirk. Usually, having multiple quirks strains the body. It causes rapid aging or brain death, the quirk singularity theory. But Izuku's quirk was control. His quirk looked at one for all not as a rival, but as a battery. Connect, Izuku ordered. Link the stockpile to the mitochondria. Use the excess energy to fuel cellular regeneration. The pain peaked, a blinding white flash that made Izuku arch his back and scream, and then, suddenly, vanished. Izuku lay panting in the sand. The steam clearing around him. He felt heavy, not physically heavy, but existentially heavy. He felt a hum under his skin, a low vibration that wasn't there before. It was like standing next to a high-voltage transformer. Midoriya? All Might whispered. Izuku opened his eyes. In the fading light, his green irises seemed to glow with a faint, electric yellow bioluminescence. I can feel them, Izuku whispered. The others? They're quiet. But they're there. He looked at his hand. He clenched it. The battery is installed. Month 8, the first test. Installing the battery was one thing. Drawing power from it was another. Okay, All Might said, standing behind a makeshift blast shield, an old car door he held up. Try to draw out the power. But be careful. Remember, clench your buttocks and yell from inside your heart. That is metaphorically sound but biologically nonsense, Izuku muttered. He stood facing a large refrigerator he had dubbed the monolith. Izuku closed his eyes. He reached for the hum inside him. He visualized the switch. He flipped it. Power, 100%. Instantly, red veins webbed across his arm. The energy surged like a flood. It was too much. It was a tsunami trying to fit through a garden hose. Warning, his quirk screamed. Structural integrity compromised. Tensile stress on humerus exceeding 200 megapascals. Muscular avulsion imminent. If he punched now, his arm would explode. Not break, explode. Abort, Izuku thought. He cut the connection instantly. The red lines faded. He gasped, falling to one knee. What happened? All Might asked. It's too volatile, Izuku panted. The output, it's binary. It wants to give me everything or nothing. If I use 100%, my somatic sovereignty can't reinforce my bones fast enough to handle the recall. I'd need bones made of titanium. You have to learn to control the output, All Might said. Dial it down. I can't just dial it down, Izuku said, frustrated. It's a floodgate. I need a regulator. He sat in the sand, thinking. He went into his muttering trance. The energy travels through the nervous system to activate the muscles. If the signal is too strong, the muscle contracts too violently. I need to physically limit the conductivity of my own nerves. He stood up. I'm going to try something. Be careful, All Might said. Izuku focused on the nerves in his right arm. Specifically, the brachial plexus. Constrict, he commanded. He physically narrowed the neural pathways. He thickened the myelin sheaths around the nerves to insulate the signal, increasing the resistance. He was essentially turning his arm into a resistor. Let the power flow, he thought. But choke it. He flipped the switch again. The energy surged. It hit the bottleneck he had created in his shoulder. It fought against his own biology. Green lightning crackled around his skin, not the wild, destructive red of before, but a controlled, buzzing green. 5%, Izuku estimated. I am allowing 5% of the voltage to pass through the blockade. He looked at the fridge. Reinforce fist. Calcium deposits on knuckles. Lock wrist. Smash. He punched. Boom. The fridge didn't just dent. It crumpled inward, folded in half, and launched backward 10 feet, plowing through the sand. Izuku stood there, his fist smoking. He checked his hand. The skin was red. His knuckles were bruised. A microfracture in his third metacarpal. Damage report, Izuku whispered. Minor. Healable in 3 minutes. He turned to All Might, a wide, slightly manic grin on his face. I figured it out. I have to strangle the power with my own nervous system. All Might lowered the car door. He looked at the crumpled fridge. He looked at the boy who had just turned his own body into a circuit breaker. You're crazy, All Might said affectionately. But you're brilliant. Month 10, the masterpiece. The final day arrived. The beach was unrecognizable. Where there had once been mountains of garbage, there was now pristine white sand. The horizon was visible, clear and blue. The ocean lapped gently at the shore, no longer choked by plastic. But the most dramatic change was not the landscape. It was the boy standing in the center of it. Izuku Midoriya stood atop the final pile, a pyramid of compacted trash he had gathered for pickup. He was wearing a white t-shirt that strained against his chest. His posture was perfect. His breathing was so controlled it was barely perceptible. He wasn't just fit. He was optimized. His bone density was 3 times that of a normal human. His muscle fibers were arranged in a lattice pattern for maximum torque. His eyes were sharp, processing wind speed, light levels, and the structural integrity of the trash pile beneath him. He was a biological weapon wrapped in the skin of a teenager. All Might arrived in his buff form, landing with a dramatic thud. Oh my goodness! All Might bellowed. Look at this place. And look at you! Izuku hopped down. He landed silently, his legs absorbing the impact with fluid grace. The project is complete, Izuku said. All refuse has been sorted, recycled, or compacted. My caloric intake has been adjusted to maintenance levels. I am ready. All Might laughed, a hearty sound that echoed off the water. You did it! You truly embodied the spirit of Plus Ultra. You have become a worthy vessel. He clapped a massive hand on Izuku's shoulder. But tell me, young Midoriya, do you feel like a hero? Izuku paused. He looked at his hands. Hands that could crush stone. Hands that could heal themselves. Hands that held the power of the greatest hero in history. I feel. Izuku started. He searched for a clinical term. Potent? Capable? But then he looked at All Might's smiling face. He remembered the feeling of eating the hair, the feeling of the connection. I feel ready to save people, Izuku said softly. And I'm hungry. All Might fell over laughing. Of course you are. Come on. I'll treat you to breakfast before the exam. You'll need the energy. I require approximately 4,000 calories before the practical exam, Izuku noted, walking beside his idol. Do you think the restaurant serves raw eggs by the dozen? Please don't order that, All Might pleaded. It scares the waitresses. Epilogue to the training, the shift. As they walked away from the beach, Izuku took one last look at the ocean. For 10 months, he had treated his body like a machine. He had turned off pain. He had regulated his emotions to keep his cortisol levels low. He had become a creature of logic and biology. But as the wind hit his face, he felt a flutter in his chest. A nervousness, anxiety, his brain supplied. Adrenal glands preparing for the exam. Usually, he would suppress it. He would force his heart rate down. But today, he let it beat. Thump thump. Thump thump. It was fast. It was erratic. It was human. I'm nervous, Izuku admitted aloud. All Might smiled down at him. Good. That means you care. Hold on to that, Izuku. Don't analyze it away. Let it drive you. Izuku took a deep breath. Okay. He clenched his fist, feeling the one for all spark deep inside, purring like a kitten waiting to become a lion. Yue hai, Izuku whispered. Here I come. Input, determination. Output, plus ultra. The gates of Yue High School were less of an architectural feature, and more of a psychological barrier. Towering, imposing, and gleaming in the morning sun, they represented the threshold between the mundane and the extraordinary. For hundreds of students streaming through them, the air was thick with anxiety. Heart rates were elevated. Palms were sweating. Cortisol levels were spiking. For Izuku Midoriya, the air smelled of ozone, unwashed teenager, and fear. He stood near the entrance, checking his wristwatch. Not for the time, but for his biometrics. Heart rate, 58 BPM. Optimal. Blood oxygen, 99%. Glucose levels peaking. Core temperature, 37.0 degrees Celsius. He was a biological machine primed for operation. He wore the standard middle school uniform, but it fit him poorly. His shoulders were too broad, the fabric straining against the density of his deltoids. His gait was smooth, almost unnervingly so. He didn't bounce when he walked. He glided, his knees and ankles absorbing the impact of each step with calculated efficiency to minimize caloric waste. Get out of my way, Deku. The voice was low, a growl that vibrated in the lower chest register. Katsuki Bakugo walked past him, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched. Izuku analyzed him instantly. Gait analysis. Tension in the trapezius. Favoring the right leg slightly. Possibly a minor strain from overtraining. Pheromones, aggression, mixed with uncertainty. Good morning, Kaken, Izuku said. His voice was calm, devoid of the stutter that had plagued him for years. Your cortisol levels seem high. Deep breathing exercises would oxygenate your blood and improve reaction times for the exam. Bakugo stopped. He turned slowly, his red eyes narrowing. He looked at Izuku, really looked at him. He saw the thick neck, the calloused hands, the eyes that tracked movement like a predatory bird. Don't analyze me, you freak, Bakugo hissed. But he didn't yell. He didn't pop an explosion. He just scoffed and walked away. Izuku watched him go. Inefficient emotional regulation, he noted. But high explosive potential. Izuku took a deep breath, flooding his alveoli with oxygen. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a pouch of high-viscosity glucose gel, and sucked it down in one gulp. Fuel, he whispered. Let's begin. The written exam. The lecture hall was silent, save for the scratching of pencils and the ticking of the clock. Izuku sat in row 4, seat B. The test paper lay before him. General Studies. Hero Law. Quirk Physics. Mathematics. He picked up his pencil. Step 1, Cognitive Optimization. Izuku closed his eyes for a split second. He focused on the carotid arteries in his neck. Dilate. He focused on the blood vessels feeding his frontal cortex. Maximize flow. He felt the rush. A warm pressure built behind his eyes as oxygen-rich blood flooded his brain. His perception of time seemed to slow down. The ticking of the clock dragged out. Tick. Tock. He opened his eyes. His pupils were dilated, taking in maximum light. He read question 1. Calculate the trajectory of a villain with a mass of 80 kilograms thrown at an angle of 45 degrees with a force of 5,000 newtons, accounting for wind resistance. Easy, his brain fired. Parabolic arc air density variable. Gravity constant. His hand moved. It was a blur. He wasn't just writing, he was printing the answers with the speed of a typewriter. Question after question fell before him. He didn't need to think. He just accessed the data stored in his neurons, which he had reinforced with extra myelin sheaths during his 10 months of study to speed up signal transmission. Midway through the exam, the student next to him, a boy with a beak for a nose, stopped writing and stared. He could hear a low humming sound coming from Izuku. It was the sound of Izuku's blood rushing through his head. Steam began to rise from Izuku's scalp. His brain was overheating from the metabolic activity. Cooling required, Izuku noted. Dilate scalp capillaries. Vent heat. The steam thickened slightly. The proctor, ectoplasm, looked up from his desk. He saw the green-haired boy surrounded by a faint mist, writing furiously. Is he cooking his own brain? Ectoplasm wondered. Izuku finished the 3-hour exam in 45 minutes. He placed his pencil down. He reduced the blood flow to his brain to normal levels to conserve energy. The steam dissipated. He spent the remaining 2 hours and 15 minutes in a state of suspended animation, lowering his heart rate to 30 BPM to save calories for the practical. The orientation. Everybody say hey. Present Mic's voice hit the auditorium like a physical blow. The sound waves registered at approximately 120 decibels. Izuku flinched. Not out of surprise, but pain. His enhanced hearing made him sensitive. Auditory defense engaged, Izuku thought. He tightened the tensor tympani muscles in his ears, dampening the vibration of his eardrums. The hero's voice muffled instantly to a tolerable volume. Welcome to the live performance. Present Mic shouted, posing. We're going to skip the boring stuff and get right to the main event. Practical exam. Izuku sat in the dark, analyzing the hero. Present Mic, quirk voice. His vocal cords must be reinforced with a cartilaginous structure similar to a howler monkey, but denser, likely titanium-calcium hybrid deposits. If he coughs, does he generate a sonic boom? Excuse me. A hand shot up in the middle of the auditorium. A spotlight hit a tall boy with glasses and blue hair. I have a question. The boy shouted, pointing at the pamphlet. The printout lists 4 types of villains, but you only displayed 3. If this is a mistake, it is highly shameful for a prestigious school like UA. And you, the boy spun around and pointed a stiff finger directly at Izuku. You've been muttering this entire time. It's distracting. If you're here to have a picnic, please leave immediately. The auditorium went silent. All eyes turned to Izuku. Izuku blinked. He hadn't realized he was vocalizing his analysis. He stood up slowly. The chair creaked under his density. My apologies, Izuku said. His voice was flat, carrying easily across the room without shouting. I was analyzing the proctor's physiology. As for my picnic, I am consuming a nutrient paste to maintain glycogen levels. I suggest you do the same. Your stiff posture indicates high tension in your erector spinae muscles. You'll cramp up within 10 minutes of the exam starting. The boy, Tenya froze, his mouth slightly open. What? And regarding the 4th villain, Izuku continued, turning to present Mic. It is likely a 0-point obstacle. A hazard to be avoided, meant to test situational awareness and retreat protocols. Correct? Present Mic grinned, giving a thumbs up. Bingo! That examinee gets it. It's the 0-pointer. It's huge, it's mean, and it's worth nothing. Avoid it like the plague. Izuku sat down. The students around him shifted away, whispering, Did he just diagnose that guy? He's creepy. Did you see his eyes? They glowed. Battle Center B. The changing rooms were a chaotic mess of boys changing into tracksuits and bragging about their quirks. Izuku stood by his locker, removing his uniform. When he took off his shirt, the chatter near him died instantly. His back was a tapestry of muscle. It wasn't the aesthetic muscle of a bodybuilder. It was the functional, terrifying muscle of an anatomical chart come to life. The erector spinae stood out like steel cables. His lats flared wide. There was 0 body fat. His skin was pulled tight over a frame that looked too dense for a human. He pulled on a simple green tracksuit and tightened his red sneakers. He checked the custom soles he had added, extra shock absorption layers. He walked out to the bus. The ride to Battle Center B was quiet. Izuku sat near the back, eating a block of calorie-dense pemmican. It smelled like beef fat and berries. He noticed the girl from the entrance, the one with the round face, sitting a few rows ahead. She looked nervous. She was shaking her hands out. Anxiety tremor, Izuku noted. She needs to ground herself. They arrived at the gate. It was massive, opening up to a replica of a city district. Izuku stepped off the bus. He moved to the side, away from the main cluster of students. He needed space to warm up. He began his routine. He grabbed his left shoulder with his right hand and pulled. Pop! He dislocated his shoulder. He rotated the arm 360 degrees in the socket, stretching the ligaments far beyond normal range, then slammed it back into place with a sickening crunch. He did the same with his hips. Nearby students recoiled. Oh God! One boy yelled. Are you okay? Lubricating the joint capsules, Izuku said, rotating his neck until it cracked like a gunshot. Synovial fluid production increases with mechanical stress. I am preparing for high-velocity impact. You're disgusting, the boy whispered, backing away. Izuku ignored him. He looked at the gate. Condition green. Strategy blitz. Quirk, somatic sovereignty active. One for all, stand by. Start. President Mick's voice rang out from the tower. There's no countdown in real battles. Run. Run. Die. Or wait, don't die. Just run. The other students hesitated, confused by the lack of a 3-2-1. But Izuku was already gone. Explosive start. He engaged the fast twitch fibers in his legs. He flooded his system with adrenaline. He didn't run like a track star. He ran low to the ground, his center of gravity dropped, his arms pumping like pistons. He tore up the pavement as he launched, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Whoa! That guy is fast. Izuku hit the first intersection before anyone else had cleared the gate. The combat phase. A robot, a one-pointer, wheeled around the corner. It locked onto him with a red optical sensor. Target acqui. Izuku didn't stop. He didn't slow down. Threat low. Armor, light steel alloy. Weakness, central processor in the thorax. Izuku lunged. He didn't use one for all. He didn't need it. He hardened the bones of his right fist, drawing calcium from his bloodstream to create a density rivaling granite. He tightened the muscles of his arm into a rigid lance. Impact. He punched the robot in the chest. Crunch. Metal shrieked. The robot didn't just dent, it caved in. Izuku's fist punched clean through the chassis, ripping out the wiring. Sparks showered over him. He yanked his hand back. The robot slumped, powering down. 1 point, Izuku counted. He heard whirring to his left. 2 3-pointers. Missile launchers primed. Threat moderate. Projectiles imminent. Response, evasion and redirection. Izuku jumped. He pushed his leg muscles to their limit, leaping 12 feet into the air. He landed on the side of a building, his fingers digging into the concrete like claws. He had sharpened his fingernails into keratin spikes. The missiles fired, hitting the spot where he had just been. Izuku pushed off the wall. He became a projectile. He landed on the first 3-pointer, driving his knees into its head. Weight increase. He momentarily shifted his mass, recruiting every fiber to press down. The robot crumbled under the sudden force. He backflipped off the wreckage, landing behind the second robot. He grabbed its rear axle. Hysterical strength, engage. Humans normally only use about 60% of their muscle potential to prevent injury. Izuku turned the safety off. He used 100%. He lifted the 400-pound robot over his head and slammed it into the pavement. Smash. 7 points. He was panting slightly. Heat rising. Metabolism burning at 600%. Calories depleting. He reached into his pocket, grabbed a glucose tube, and squeezed it into his mouth while sprinting toward the next target. Other students were arriving now. Lasers fired. Explosions rocked the street. Ida was zooming past, kicking robots. Bakugo was flying overhead, blasting them. But on the ground, amidst the chaos, Izuku was a horror movie monster. He didn't have flashy lights. He didn't shout attack names. He just disassembled machines with brutal, surgical efficiency. He ripped heads off. He kicked legs out. He utilized the robot's own momentum to crush them against walls. 40 points, he muttered, dusting oil off his cheek. 45. He saw a student, the laser naval boy, cornered by 3 2-pointers. Inefficient positioning, Izuku noted. He rushed in. He grabbed a stop sign that had been knocked over. He squeezed the metal pole, his grip strength molding it to his hand. He swung the sign like a baseball bat. Clang. 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 3 robots decapitated. 51 points, Izuku said. He turned to the laser boy. Your firing stance exposes your diaphragm. If you crouch, you can stabilize the recoil. He ran off before the boy could say thank you. The 0-pointer. The buzzer was nearing. Izuku had 68 points. It was a comfortable score. Objective complete, he thought. Conserve energy. Cool down. He slowed to a jog. His uniform was torn. He was covered in soot and oil. His skin was flush red as he vented heat. Then, the ground jumped. Tremor detected. Magnitude, 4.5. A shadow fell over the city. From the central plaza, a monstrosity rose. The zero-pointer. It was colossal, easily bigger than the buildings around it. Its tank treads crushed concrete to dust. Its green eyes scanned the ants below. Doom, the robot seemed to broadcast, simply by existing. The students froze. Then they screamed, "Run! It's the zero-pointer! Get out of here!" Izuku looked up. Analysis. Mass approximate 2,000 tons. Height 50 meters. Armament, kinetic crushers. Point value 0. Logic run. It was the only efficient choice. Fighting it yielded no reward and carried a 99% risk of injury. It was a waste of calories. Izuku turned on his heel. Retreat vector calculated. Ow! The sound cut through the chaos. A high-pitched cry of pain. Izuku stopped. His ears swiveled, figuratively, though he did tense the auricular muscles. He looked back. Uraraka Ochako. The gravity girl. She was pinned under a slab of concrete. She was right in the path of the zero-pointer. The robot raised a massive metal fist. It was going to crush the street. Izuku froze. His brain, the supercomputer of biological data, flashed red. Risk critical. Reward 0 points. Action ignore. Survival priority. He took a step away. Thump thump. His heart beat against his ribs. Heroes save people. All Might's voice echoed in his memory. Pain tells you you're alive. Izuku looked at the girl. She wasn't efficient. She was trapped. She was going to die. Inefficient, Izuku whispered. But he wasn't talking about her. He was talking about running away. A hero who runs away when someone needs help is a broken system. Override. Izuku turned back. Adrenaline, 100%. Pain inhibitors, maximum. One for all, engage. He felt the power wake up. The stockpile. It roared like a furnace. Izuku crouched. Leg modification, grasshopper. He focused on his legs. He shortened the muscle fibers, winding them up like springs. He thickened the tendons in his knees until they were like steel cables. He flooded the fast twitch fibers with ADP. Jump. He released the tension. Boom. The concrete beneath him shattered into a crater. Izuku didn't jump. He launched. He broke the sound barrier. A sonic boom rippled through the street, knocking nearby students off their feet. He soared upward. The wind tore at his face. He passed the 3rd floor. The 5th. The 10th. He was level with the robot's face. He floated there for a microsecond. The robot's massive green lens stared at him. Izuku pulled his right arm back. One for all, 100%. He felt the energy surge into his arm. It was too much. His bones creaked. Reinforce! Izuku screamed internally. Osteoblasts, lay down calcium. Collagen, harden. Skin, become armor. He hardened his arm into a club of diamond-hard biological matter. Smayawash. He punched. The impact was blinding. The air pressure compressed instantly, then exploded outward. The robot's face, solid steel plating, crumpled. The force traveled through the machine's neck, shattering the internal mechanisms. The head of the zero-pointer was blown clean off its shoulders. The massive body groaned, tipped backward, and began to fall, exploding as it went. Izuku hovered in the air, the smoke clearing around him. He looked at his arm. It was purple. It was twisted. The reinforcement had saved it from turning to mist, but the bones were shattered. The radius and ulna were sawdust. Damage assessment, right arm compromised. Functional utility, 0%. Pain ignored. Then, gravity took hold. He began to fall. Altitude, 50 meters. Velocity, increasing. Problem landing. Izuku looked down. The ground was rushing up fast. I have one arm. My legs are fatigued from the jump. If he landed normally, he would shatter his spine. Strategy, biocushion. Izuku focused. He couldn't stop the fall, but he could survive the stop. Soften, he commanded. He told his bones to decalcify, to become rubbery. He told his cartilage to expand. He told his muscles to lose their tension and become like water balloons. He was turning himself into a biological airbag. Release. Suddenly a hand slapped his cheek. He stopped. Uraraka, floating on a piece of debris she had levitated, had slapped him in midair. Release! She gasped, putting her fingertips together. Gravity returned. But instead of falling 50 meters, he fell 3 feet. Splat! He hit the ground. Because he had softened his body, he didn't land with a thud. He landed with a wet flop, his limbs splaying out like a jellyfish. Someone whispered. Izuku lay there for a second. Then, he took a breath. Harden. His structure returned. His bones rigidified, except the broken arm. He sat up. Thank you, he said to Uraraka. She was green in the face, looking like she was about to vomit. That was timely. She gave a thumbs up, then turned and threw up rainbows. Izuku looked at his right arm. It was flapping uselessly. Inefficient, he mumbled. He grabbed his right wrist with his left hand. This will require calibration. He pulled. Crack. The student's screaming intensified. Did he just? He just set his own arm. Izuku gritted his teeth. He couldn't heal the shatter. That would take days of calcium intake. But he could align the fragments so they wouldn't pierce the skin. 1 minute left. Present Mike announced. Izuku stood up. He swayed. His vision blurred. Blood sugar, critical. 30 milligrams per deciliter. Hypoglycemic shock imminent. He patted his pockets. Empty. He had eaten his last gel. He looked around. He saw a piece of the robot nearby. A copper wire was sticking out. Izuku walked over, picked up the wire, and put it in his mouth. Copper. Trace minerals. Not fuel. Need carbon. He spat it out. Does anyone? Izuku wheezed, looking at the terrified crowd of students. Does anyone have a chocolate bar? A boy with a tail, Ojiro, nervously held out a Snickers. Here? Izuku snatched it. He didn't unwrap it. He ate it whole, wrapper and all. Digestion time, 2 minutes. Wrapper, cellulose and plastic. Indigestible but passable. Thank you, Izuku whispered. His color began to return. The aftermath. Recovery girl arrived shortly after the buzzer. She walked through the crowd, handing out gummies. Good work, good work. Here, eat this. She reached Izuku. She stopped. She looked at his arm. Oh dear, she clicked her tongue. You used that quirk, didn't you? Yes, ma'am, Izuku said. He was sitting on the curb, nursing his arm. And you tried to fix it yourself? She poked the brake. I aligned the fragments to promote callus formation, Izuku explained. I also flooded the area with platelets to stop internal bleeding. You're a nightmare for a doctor, you know that? Recovery girl sighed. Your body is doing 10 things at once. If I use my quirk on you now, with your metabolism already running this hot, it might kill you. I calculated that risk, Izuku nodded. I just need food. Lots of it. I can heal it myself in 24 hours if I consume 20,000 calories. 20,000? She hit him on the head with her cane. You'll bankrupt the school cafeteria. Come on, get on the stretcher. I need to monitor your heart. As Izuku was loaded onto the stretcher, he looked back at the destroyed city. He looked at the 0-pointer lying in ruins. He felt a throbbing pain in his arm, and for the first time in a decade, he didn't mind it. I saved her, he thought. Inefficient. Stupid. Reckless. He closed his eyes, a small smile playing on his lips. Heroic. The observation room. In the dark room lined with screens, the teachers of UA sat in silence. That kid, Midnight whispered. Did you see him? He looked like he was dissecting the robots. He has zero combat style, Cementos noted. It's pure brutality. Efficient, but scary. And that jump, Snipe adjusted his hat. That wasn't a quirk. That was pure muscle manipulation. Then he pulled out a strength enhancer at the end. What is he? All Might sat in the back, shrinking into his oversized suit. He was beaming. He's the vessel, he murmured to himself. However, a tired voice cut through the room. Eraserhead, Aizawa Shoda, stared at the screen. He was rewinding the footage of Izuku looking at the 0-pointer. He saw the hesitation. The calculation. And then, the decision. He hesitated, Aizawa said. He weighed the pros and cons. He's logical. Almost to a fault. But when it mattered, he threw logic away. Aizawa grinned, a rare, terrifying expression. A logical ruffian who knows when to be irrational. He has potential. So, the principal, Nizu, popped out of a scarf. What are the scores? The screen tallied up. Izuku Midoriya, villain points, 68, rescue points, 60, total, 128. A new record, Nizu cackled. It seems we have a monster enrolling this year. 1 week later, Izuku sat at his desk in his room. His arm was in a cast, mostly for show, as the bone had already knitted together, though it was still soft. He was eating a bowl of raw eggs and rice. The letter lay on the desk. The hologram of All Might had just faded. Come, young Midoriya. This is your Hero Academia. Izuku picked up the letter. He looked at his reflection in the window. He looked different than he did 10 months ago. Stronger. Harder. But his eyes were the same. I got in, he whispered to the empty room. He took a bite of rice. Now, I need to figure out how to keep my arm attached when I use 100%. He pulled out a notebook. New project, carbon fiber osteointegration. Time to study.